Rebellions by small groups can change the course of history. Throughout history, rebellions have led to great events. Many rebels have brought down governments. Putin and Chenko are also desperate against the rebels. The rebels in Belarus are the talk of the world. The rebel group managed to shoot down Putin's plane. So who is this group? What is happening in? How can the rebels change the course of the war? We have prepared the answer to these questions. This information prepared by our team after an intensive work is quite interesting. Let's get started. If you're ready, when the war between Russia and Ukraine started, all the international relation experts started talking about Belarus because Belarus has very strange political relations. So what makes Belarus so important? Let's refresh our knowledge about Belarus to answer that question. Belarus was established in 1991 after the dissolution of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. However, Russia has never allowed Belarus to become a fully free country. The first elections in Belarus were held in 1994. Lukashenko won those elections and is still the president of Belarus. 5 years after Lukashenko became president of Belarus, elections were held in Russia. In 1999, Putin became the president of Russia. Close relations between Lukashenko and Putin increased during this period. Both leaders were deeply hostile to the West. They increased their anti-Western policies day by. Both leaders became more and more repressive in both countries. There was a very intense crackdown on dissidents. Lukashenko manipulated the public through the media and interfered in all elections. In the 2020 elections, Lukashenko announced that he had won the elections with 80% of the vote. However, the majority of Belarusians did not believe this. It is thought that Lukashenko also interfered in the election, has tied all the top commanders in his country to him. Therefore, a military coup cannot be carried out in the country. Very harsh interventions are made against the popular revolt. This is why he has been ruling the country for nearly 30 years. But the people of Belarus are now determined to change this. Younger people living in Belarus are resisting Lukashenko by establishing various organs. Whose biggest supporter is of course Putin. Putin is in close cooperation with Lukashenko. Lukashenko receives constant economic support from Russia. This is how he maintains his power. However, Putin demands many things from Lukashenko in return for the support. This makes the relationship between the two states even more awkward. Belarus has a very important geographical location. It forms a border between Russia and the European states, but there is something more important for Belarus's location at the moment. Belarus is located north of Ukraine, and the distance between the Belarus and border and Kiev is quite short. That's why Russia wants Belarus's military support. The Russian army failed to achieve the success it expected as a result of the ground operation launched from the east of Ukraine. The Ukrainian army managed to stop the Russian troops on the banks of the Dpa River. After that, the Russian army had to retreat on all fronts. When Putin realized that the Russian army could not win this war, he put more pressure on Lukashenko. In the meantime, there were more and more reports that the Belarus army would join this war. Many journalists in Belarus said that the army was preparing for. The Belarusian people were very angry about this. Belarusians did not want to be part of this war. The anger of the Belarusian people scared Lukashenko. Lukashenko was very reluctant for the Belarusian army to join the war. Despite Putin's insistence, Putin increased the pressure, and as a result, the Belarusian government found anew. The Russian army started to conduct exercises in Belarus. Military airfields in Belarus were also open to the Russian Air Force. The Russian army started to enter Belarus, but this was also met with a reaction by the Belarusian people. And today, the Belarusian people did something that changed the course of the war. There were several Russian planes at an airfield near Minsk, the capital of Bel. One of these planes started flying towards Ukrainian air. Shortly after the Russian made a 50 aircraft entered Ukrainian airspace, its engines started burning. The Russian pilots thought that the cause of this fire was drones belonging to the Ukrainian army. The pilots quickly landed. However, while landing at the airport, the plane crashed and broke into pieces. Russian plane destroyed. The first news that emerged as a result of this incident was that the Russian planes had been destroyed by drones belonging to the Ukrainian army. But soon the truth came out. A secret anti-war group based in Belarus announced sabotage against the planes. Fran Rika, senior advisor to Belarus's exiled opposition leader, said on social media, "Our supporters have confirmed that the special operation to blow up a rare Russian aircraft at the Mat Luki airbase near Minsk was successful. This is considered the most successful sabotage operation since the beginning of the war because in this operation, one of the most advanced aircraft of the Russian army was destroyed. It is known that the F-50 type Russian plane is worth €330 million. Following this operation, the Russian military increased security measures at military bases in Belarus. Everyone started to wonder about the identity of the rebels who organized the operation. Information about them soon emerged. This rebel group, which goes by the name Bipolar, is organized through telegrams. These anonymous rebels want Belarus to be a free country. For this, they're fighting against Lukashenko and Putin. The Bipo group is reportedly currently preparing for new acts of sabotage. Police units loyal to Lukashenko are working hard to identify Bipolar members. Thousands of social media users living in Belarus are sending messages of support to the Bipolar group. Lukashenko is experiencing the most difficult days of his rule. As a result of these sabotage incidents in Belarus, the possibility of new social crises in the country is very high. The Belarusian people now want the Lukashenko regime to end. This is disrupting Putin's plans. Putin has now realized that he cannot conduct military operations through Belarus. This has caused great concern in the Kremlin. All Putin's methods to win this war are collapsing one by one. Russia is losing the war. The Ukrainian army continues its operations against the Russian occupation. These operations are making those who want to start a rebellion against Russia older. The Ukrainian army is on the verge of victory. What do you think about the rebels in Belarus? How do you think this will affect the course of the war? Will the Russian army leave? Big news. Russia has been facing fires of unknown origin since the day it launched its invasion of Ukraine. Moreover, many of these fires are occurring at strategic points on Russia's border with Ukraine. While the Russian authorities cannot explain the cause of these fires, many commentators say that the fires are set by Ukraine or by the Russian people against the occupant. Recently, another fire broke out that will cause great damage to the Russian military because this fire broke out in the most important factory of the Russian defense industry specializing in explosives. The fire occurred at the Chapsky mechanical plant in the city of Chapsky and Samara Oblast, Russia. This factory, considered the center of the Russian defense industry, was one of the largest factories producing explosives used by the Russian army. The ammunition problem of the Russian army, which lost dozens of ammunition depots as a result of the attacks of the Ukrainian army in the first year of the war, is known by everyone. To solve this problem, Russia accelerated the production of explosives and detonators at the Buff's mechanical plant, but the explosion at the factory means that the ammunition problem in the Russian army will continue to increase. The explosion at the factory occurred while production was in progress and workers were. The intensity of the explosion increased due to the explosives in the factory. Although many workers in the factory managed to escape at the time of the explosion, one worker died as a result of the explosion along with the death of the 46-year-old female worker. Three other workers were injured in the fire. Workers with burns and injuries were taken to the hospital by ambulance. Russian authorities did not make a statement about the explosion and fire of the Kai Japan's mechanical plant. One of the Russian news agencies wrote in an article that the explosion occurred when an explosive device with detonator caps attached detonated. It said the detonator caps were used to initiate the detonation of a bomb. Another Russian news agency reported that the explosion at the factory was caused by a violation of security, but the real cause of the explosion is still unknown. Most of the authors commenting on the Russia-Ukraine war have pointed to Ukraine and the Russians against the occupation as the cause of this explosion and other explosions in Russia. One of them was Swedish economist Andrews Osland. In a tweet in recent months, Aslan pointed out that the explosions in Russia were taking place at strategic points along the border with Ukraine. Since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, the number of fires in Russia has been increasing every day. Moreover, the cause of these fires is often unknown. Recently, another unexplained fire occurred in Moss, and this fire broke out in very important building for the Russian occupiers. It happened in a facility that carries out research and development activities for aviation and naval missile weapons of the Russian army. This fire caused outrage in Russia because the intensity of the fire was enormous. The explosion of the fuel drums in the building increased the intensity of the fire. The fire, which spread over a total of 1,500 square meters, could only be extinguished with the help of 51 fire departments. The images of the fire shared on social media were watched by millions of people. The severity of the fire was seen clearly in the shared videos. This fire, which broke out late at night, illuminated almost all of Moscow. In recent months, the fire at the Central Research Institute of the Aerospace Defense Forces in the city of Tavar in western Russia caused great fear. The fire broke out late at night and spread over an area of 2,700 square meters. 6 people died as a result of this fire and 25 people were hospitalized. The cause of the fire was not specified. One of the severe fires in Russia was at an oil depot in the city of Lv. The fire broke out in the oil depot, causing it to spread to surrounding areas. 3 streets near the oil depot was affected by the fire. Residents had to leave this area. Baru. Governor Vila Glako made a statement about this fire. Governor Glakov said the fire at the oil depot occurred as a result of an airstrike by 2 helicopters of the Ukrainian armed forces, which flew low into Russian territory. However, Ukrainian authorities have not commented on this fire. The cause of this and many other fires in Russia is unknown. Most of them are attributed to Ukrainian sabotage groups and Russian anti-occupation forces. But there is another possibility. Moreover, this possibility has become stronger after the events of these days. Russian oligarchs are being blamed for the fires. Let us examine the reason for the strong possibility. As a CAD Daily News team, we continue to report all developments regarding the Russian-Ukraine war. With our understanding of accurate and impartial journalism, you can click the Super Thanks button to support our team and continue to access the developments on the agenda from reliable sources. In the early days of the Russian-Ukrainian war, Putin, along with many politicians and oligarchs, decided to invade Ukraine. But the events of the first year of the war changed the attitude of politicians and oligarchs because Russia was dozing day by day and Putin was running out. Russia lost about 150,000 soldiers in the first year of the war. In addition, the Russian army lost thousands of tanks and equipment. Putin's shaken seat became a target for politicians and oligarchs. This situation in Russia has led to the preparations for a post-Putin Russia. For this reason, the fires in Russia, the cause of which is unclear, also brought the power struggle between the oligarchs to the agenda. Allegedly, Russian oligarchs are burdening Russian strategic points to harm Putin. The disagreements in Russia's politics these days show that the allegations are strong. The most striking disagreement in Russia is the triangle between Putin, Prin, and Ka, owner of the private military company Wagner Group, initially supported Putin's idea of invading Ukraine. Provision supports the invasion even, but so much has changed. At the beginning of the invasion, Provision was at Putin's beck and call. He even had an influence on Putin's decision. But the strengthening of the Ukrainian army with the support of Western and European countries weakened Russia. Provision turned this weakening of the Russian army into an opportunity and deployed Wagner Group soldiers in the most critical areas that Russia was trying to occupy. Wagner Group soldiers were present in many areas, especially in the towns of Bakhmut and Sardar, which the Russian invaders considered the most important. Wagner Group's presence in this region strengthened Perga over time. Perga began to criticize Putin and the Russian army because he had in mind to take part in the post-Putin administration of Russia. Another one of the names is Key deployed chain troops in areas where the war was rag. Putin, who was having trouble finding soldiers, had no choice but to act together with Pryan and Caddy. Therefore, Caddy, like Pryan, started to negotiate for a post-Putin Russia, so much so that it was claimed that Caddy conveyed to Pryan confidential information he obtained from Putin. According to this claim, Perga and Ka agreed and started preparations for post-Putin Russia. Putin, who is being cornered day by, may end up with his closest friends. What are your thoughts? What could be the cause of the fires in Russia? Do Russian oligarchs have a role in these fires? We are curious about your views.